Okay, today we're going to be speaking about the qualifications for someone to be a shochet or a bodek. The first few simanim Shulchan Aruch speak about these kind of halachas. We're going to focus on 5 specific traits that we're going to be looking at. There are many more. There are other ones. We're going to focus on 5, which we can summarize in the following sentence. The person needs to be a Jewish man who knows appropriate halachas, possesses the necessary skill, and has Yiras Shomayim. And we're going to break it up into 5 different parts and see what each of those mean. And generally, the information, what we're going to be speaking about are things that relate to the Shochet and the bodek. The bodek who checks for sirchas and to check that the animal is not a treifa. There are also menakrim and mashgichim for whom there are requirements, but not as strict or as significant as there are for the Shochet and the bodek. So the first is the person needs to be a Jew. He needs to be a Yid. So most of the poskim consider someone who's not Jewish to be pasul midaraisa. There's also all kinds of discussions about which people are considered mumrim to the point that they, or other kinds of people like that who might be disqualified because they're not considered Jewish. But in a commercial shrita, no one would dream of hiring anybody who had these kind of questions on them. You have to be way past that to be even considered. But one question came up about a group called the Bnei Israel. It's a group of people from India, quite a large group of people from India. And for years, for decades, maybe 50, 60, 70, I don't know how many years, and it actually goes back even further, there have been trials about whether those people are Jewish or not. They claim to be Jewish. They claim to have been there for hundreds or thousands of years. They have practices that seem familiar to Jewish people, but there's also lots that they don't know and lots that they don't do that we would consider to be basics. And the official position of the Rabbanut in Eretz Yisrael, which is where the main shaila relates to, is they accept them as Jewish, but not everybody agrees with that. Some people require them to have a giyur l'chumra. Some people don't accept them at all, I guess, unless they have a complete full geiris. Some require that they should show that for many generations they've been part of the Jewish community. And Reese thought that what we should do, this question came to the CRC, Reese thought what we should do is we should follow what Moshe said, which was that they should do giyur l'chumra. And therefore, once they did a giyur l'chumra, we would consider the person to be Jewish. Now, a little question that comes up with giyur l'chumra. Giyur l'chumra means we accept that you're Jewish, but to confirm it, we make that the person has to do a geiros. So that's fine for himself. Once he's finished, he has had his giyur l'chumra. But what about his wife? If we require the person who wants to be the shochet to do giyur l'chumra, his wife who didn't have that giyur l'chumra is potentially, we're considering possibly not Jewish. So of course, if a shochet we'll talk later about Yiras Shomayim, if a shochet is married to someone who wasn't Jewish, then he wouldn't be qualified to be a shochet. That would bring into question his Yiras Shomayim. But in this case, that's not correct, because here he considers her Jewish in his mind, and everyone, from his community considers her to be perfectly fine to be married to. So there's nothing lacking in his commitment to doing the right thing. We might personally not accept her as Jewish without a giyur l'chumra, but from his perspective, it doesn't take away from his Yiras Shomayim. And these kind of questions are very sensitive. Reese said people have to be very careful and delicate in how they investigate these kind of questions, because we're talking about someone, in his mind, he's perfectly 100% Jewish, and once we start looking into it, it has to be just done delicately and with sensitivity. Most of the shilas that came up in the shilas in Eretz Yisrael and the shilas in the poskim have to do with shilas of mamzerus, possibilities that generations back there were divorces that weren't done properly, but that's not relevant to us. For us, we just need to know if the person is Jewish, and again, with a giyur l'chumra, like Moshe says, then we're comfortable that now the person is Jewish, he could be a sheikh. Yet the second requirement, that should be a man. So the ikra din is that ladies are kosher for shrita. Shulchan Aruch brings it down, but the Ramah says the minhag is that we don't allow women to be sheikhtim. And I mentioned it just because, in fact, that's what everybody does. Actually, there are barely any women altogether in the slaughterhouse, but for sure not a sheikhtim. And it's worth noting the Living Torah Museum has in it Kabbalah, a letter written out for a woman in 1931 in Italy, when it was difficult, to find sheikhtim. And this lady was given permission by the Rav of the town that for 1 year she has permission to be a sheikhet for oifos, for birds, and only on condition that there are no men around or there's no meat able to be gotten that was shechted as it would usually be by a man. So here was a case where it was obviously a shas atchak, there was no way to get meat, and so they said the ikar din is that a lady is kosher v'shchita, so they gave her very limited and very specific permission to shecht in that case in order to provide meat for people. Okay, we now move on to the third one, and that is that the person needs to be knowledgeable. Okay, so the Shulchan Aruch says that if a person wants to be a shochet, he needs to know the chamesh hilchos shchita. He needs to know the 5 halachas of shchita. Of course, he has to know. Then Shulchan Aruch back earlier in Shulchan Aruch says that even if he doesn't know every detail, as long as he knows what he has to ask about, he understands that this is a question I need to ask a shayla, and he doesn't ever say that something that was really asur, he really calls it mutter. He knows when he has to shayla, that's good enough. So the Ramah says that no, he gives a little more details about what the shochet is supposed to know. He has to know the 5 hilchos shchita. He has to know how to check a chalaf and check the simanim of the shchita, and has to check how to check a reya. Okay, and the Ramah then sticks in that when we say that he has to know halachas, that doesn't mean he just has to know halachas. He has to know minhagim equal to halachas. Minhag and halacha in this case are the same. And he doesn't say what he means specifically, but an example of that would be is that the midin haGemara and the din of the Shulchan Aruch is that a shehiyah, if you pause during the shechita, a shehiyah is possible, makes the animal nevela, but if me'ikar hadin, you can pause for quite some time, so to speak, relatively a long time before the animal becomes a nevela. All kinds of din that Shulchan Aruch speaks about the details based on the Gemara. But the Ramah says the minhag by us is that we don't allow even the smallest shehiyah, no matter what part of the shechita, no matter how short it was, any shehiyah at any time makes the animal into a nevela. So that's an example of a minhag. And if the shochet didn't know that minhag, then he's missing something crucial. For us Ashkenazim, he's missing something crucial. And that's what seemingly that's the kind of thing the Ramah means when he says is a minhag and halacha are the same in this case. Okay, now the Ramah then sticks in another thing, and he says that shochet, the minhag is also that we require the person to have a Kabbalah. Meaning it shouldn't be just that he knows the halachas and the other things we're going to talk about, but he needs to actually get an official permission from someone to be a shochet. And the Ramah says some places even require that in writing, official written document that says this person is qualified to be a shochet. Now, then the Ramah adds on yet another thing, and he says it's not enough that he knew the halachas, and not enough that he has the official, one time he passed a bechina to be able that he knows enough halachas, but the Ramah says lefrakim, occasionally he needs to chazu these halachas over to make sure that he stays in his mind. He uses shkurim befiv u'beliva shelo yishkachem, and Simcha Dasha says that means is he should do it once every 30 days. He should review hilchos shchita, and different people have organized different methods of how to a shochet to review all hilchos shchita, or the main parts of hilchos shchita and hilchos bedika every 30 days, because it needs to be fresh in their mind. They need to remember the halachas that they're taking care of. Okay, so now there's a little bit of a related question that comes up as follows. In meat, in all kinds of kashrus areas, but in meat in particular, there's the following issue. If one person has a different psak or different way of acting as far as an area of halacha, so he does what he was told, or what his family or his community does, and other people do what they do. But in kosher meat, I'm sort of at the mercy of the shochet and the bodek, which is to say let's say there's a bodek who would accept sirchas that our community would not accept. So he's going to say the meat is kosher, and we would not accept that meat is kosher. So when I want to get meat from him, I sort of can't. How do I follow my own practice, my own psak of what I'm supposed to do when I'm dependent on him? So the simple thing to do is for the person to find a shechita or a community that does shechita that meets their standard. So I know that I follow this. This is my standard. I know I follow this is my standard, and I buy my meat or get my meat from a shochet or from a hashgacha that does the same thing, that he also meets that standard. That's okay, and that's good and well. But what happens when the shochet or the bodek and the Rav Machshir themselves don't have the same standard? Like, for example, the Rav Machshir is stricter about what he considers to be Beis Yosef or Chalak, which sirchas does he let pass as being considered to be Beis Yosef or Chalak, and the mashgiach, the bodek himself, he has a lesser standard in his mind. Yeah, even other things could pass by. Okay, so now what happens? Can we accept the bodek's word? Now it's between the Rav Machshir and the bodek. The bodek is saying yes, this meat qualifies as Beis Yosef, but the Rav Machshir and the bodek don't have the same so to speak, standards of what is considered a piece of meat that qualifies as Beis Yosef. So should we say he's a Shabbos, he's a person with nemanos, we should believe him, or should we say he doesn't care about these dinim? To him, it doesn't mean anything whether it has that tzirich or not, because to him those are all qualified as Beis Yosef. So the general rule is, as a rule, we would trust a person, even if he personally keeps to a lower standard. And it comes up in other issues also. It comes up in, I don't know, if the mashgiach doesn't keep chol v'yisrael, or the mashgiach doesn't makbid on yashin, but he's giving hashgach on that kind of a thing. If he tells you that it's chol v'yisrael or it's yashin, or in our case it's the meat is Beis Yosef God, then you're allowed to trust him. And you could see this in the Ramah in Siman Kufi Tes, who says the following: if someone is makbid on something because he thinks the din is like that, or he doesn't think it's the din, but he wants to be machmir for himself. So here's a person who's taking a stricter stand. He's allowed to eat with people who are not machmir. That means not only if I'm machmir on it, but even if I think meikor hadin, you have to be makbid on that thing. And keep it other people. Those people will not give me something that I consider isser, even though they themselves are not makbid. So you see from here that if one person has a lower standard, but he's giving food to somebody else who has the higher standard, then he's trusted to be careful about that. And if he says the food is Beis Yosef, or it's chol v'yisrael, or yashin, or whatever the other stand that he's saying it is, that even though he personally is not makbid, if he wants to tell you that meat or that food meets your standard, he's trusted to say that. Okay. Now we move on to our fourth issue, and that is the skill of the shochet. So as I mentioned, the Ramah says the minig is that a person needs to have a Kabbalah in order to be a shochet. They should not just know the dinim; they need to have Kabbalah. A chacham has to tell them or write out for them that they are qualified to do that. And the Ramah says he should also check that the person has the skill to do the job as well. Also, okay, because a big part of being a shochet or a bodek is not just the technical knowledge of the book knowledge, but also the physical, the dexterity, and the ability to do the act that you have to do. So, and in fact, nowadays, in a lot of places, the person who does the testing on the knowledge is not the same person who does the testing on the skill. They take a seasoned, experienced shochet or bodek to check that this person really has the skill that he needs, and he does that part of it, and then he reports back to the chacham who gives the test on the book knowledge, shach and taz, and see if he knows the chamisha hilchos shchita. And then that person, the chacham, is the one who writes it, but he's counting on the expert, the experienced person, to check on the actual skill. Okay, so before shchita became so commercialized, when a person got a Kabbalah, the Kabbalah was he was a full service person. He did everything. He was shechted, he was a shochet, he was a bodek. He did kashrut and dakas and oifos. He did everything. He was the town shochet, or he was the shochet for an area, and he did everything. He was called in a shochet or bodek. Shin vav beis, he was a shochet or bodek. Okay, but nowadays, as things have become more commercialized, what's happened is people have become more specialized in what they do also, and they may only either have an official Kabbalah, or even if they have a Kabbalah for everything, they may only have the experience to do one. For example, there are people who are only shecht birds, and they only shecht animals, or they're amazing at bedikas pnim. That's all they do. They just sit and do bedikas pnim all the time, or bedikas chods, or bedikas kresim we spoke about the other time, or they only check Thomas Agidin. They become like their expertise, and that's like sometimes that's even a staffing issue. I can remember a specific case where there was a shrita that worked. It was very fast. There was many animals per hour, and in that shrita, almost every time there was a specific shochet assigned for the shechita and a specific person for the bedikas pnim, because you needed certain kind of experience and expertise to handle the speed that was going on up there, which those people were perfect for. Okay, so now so that has to do with the skill that nowadays people have become, not just that they get a one-time Kabbalah for things, but some people end up being very, very good at a specific thing, and that's what their focus is on. Now, one last thing is that the Gilya Marsha says at the beginning of Hilchos Shchita, he brings, there are those who have a minig, that a practice that when a shochet reaches 80 years old, they no longer let him shecht. That's because At that point, he says his hands begin to shake, and he may not be able to have the same skill that he always had when he was younger. But you should. The Gilul Maharsha says that he doesn't think you're mechuyev to do that. He brings others who say case by case decide whether a person is qualified. There's also there's a quote from the Satmar Rebbe, Rabbi Yoel, the earlier Satmar Rebbe, who says that shechtim at 70 years old should stop shechting, and so there are those actually in practice who do that. Nowadays, you have to just be careful for the legality of it. There's something called the Age Discrimination and Employment Act, ADEA, that may make that illegal under certain circumstances to fire someone based on their age. But such as a practice some shchitas have, that they only allow someone to shecht until a certain age. Okay. Our last thing we need to speak about is Yiras Shomayim. So all the criteria we spoke about before, and the first four things are of course important, but the most focus and the most attention tends to go to this criteria of, does the person who's doing the shechita have the appropriate Yiras Shomayim to serve as the shochet or the bodek for our food? The way the Simcha Chadasha says is, Habalita Roshos ala shechita. He wants to become he wants to get a Kabbalah, Reishis Chochma Yachmer Olav. The first thing you should check into is in Darko Mesukanim, the Yiras Hashem Apanav. You want to make sure that he has a Yiras Shomayim, and the reason is because some of the decisions that this person is going to be making for us are very, very delicate. I mentioned before about making a tiny shehiyah. You want to check if a chalaf is clean. You want to check did you shecht roiva leveshet in the right place? The badika is a sircha? Is it this kind? Is it kashrut? Is it, where is it? Exactly what's going on? These are very delicate decisions, and as fine and delicate as those decisions are, there's a lot riding on them. There's all kinds of people who are potentially eating nevela or treifa if the person doesn't do it correctly. So we need a person who has Yiras Shomayim to be able to make those decisions in an honest and correct way, not either being too swift and quick about it and not paying attention, and also not being swayed to make more animals kosher just for whatever reason he has. And Rabbeinu Yonah in Shari Tshuva has a long paragraph about this, and Shulchan Aruch brings part of it, who says over there, the Shulchan Aruch, the part that he quotes is that you need a lot of Yiras Shomayim in order to do bedikas hasakin. He says sometimes it takes 2-3 times of checking the chalaf before you notice a pegima that's in it. He says, ubechines chosh hamishush kefi kavanas halev. How well you're going to feel those little nicks in the knife has to do with how much you pay attention and how much you're focusing on it, and that's a function of Yiras Shomayim. Okay, there's a story. The Shachas Maram at it, and then the Pri Megadim brings the details of it. There was once Erev Yom Kippur, and they were shechting for kaparas. And the Shochet came to the Marshal with this chalaf, and the Marshal says, "Is this chalaf ready for using? Is it good for shechting?" And the Shochet said, "Yeah, it's perfectly fine." And the Marshal checked it, and he found a pegima in it. Yiras and he found a pegima in it. So he gave it back to the Shochet. The Shochet checked it. Chaki checked it. He said, "Perfect, no problem." So the Marshal again checked it. He found the pegima, as did someone else who was sitting there. So as an example, someone who wasn't taking his work seriously, in the sense that he wasn't noticing that there was a pegima in there, and of course the outcome of that is very serious. Potentially, if there's a pegima, and the animals in the vela because of that. Now, even though I just told you all these reasons and all these people who talk about having Yiras Shomayim, at the same time, really the din is more limited than it might seem, and that's the proof to that is, for example, is you look at the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Beis says that if a person is a mummer l'te'avan, that means he's a mummer who does things l'te'avan, where to his benefit, he's a person who does the right thing, but when it's easy, when he has what to benefit from it, he will be over on an isser. That person could shecht l'chatchila. Now the Rama disagrees, but the Shulchan Aruch says mutar l'chatchila for that person to shecht, as long as someone checked his knife for him. Okay, the din is a shikar. Unless he's really seriously drunk, most a shikar could shecht. The Ramah at the end of Siman Beis tells you should know a monkey is not kosher for shechita. Okay, because it's from Tosefta. The monkey is like someone who's not a yid. He's not kosher for shechita. I mean, look, really? So you think that the monkey has Yiras Shomayim and the shikar is able to pay attention to what he's doing, and the mumulati oven? All these are people who have what we would think of Yiras Shomayim, that focus and paying attention to do things right. So what it appears is that these earlier poskim speak about Yiras Shomayim, they're talking about for the specific acts that need that fine thing. Like for example, like I mentioned, the mumlati oven, he could check, but someone has to check this chalaf first because we don't trust him to check the chalaf. Like in the story in the Marshal, we don't trust him to check the chalaf, but we trust him for everything else. So in those, we have needs for Yiras Shomayim for specific things, but lav dafka with the ikra din required for in every prat, so to speak, to be Yiras Shomayim. But that's all might be the din. That might be right or wrong about what the din is, but in practice, that's not what goes on. In practice, people who run hashgachas, people who oversee shchita, are very sensitive and very careful to find people who have Yiras Shomayim through and through in all areas of how they practice, and they want a person who they know they could trust this person to shecht or be a bodek as per what people are expecting. Now, that's true in a general sense. But the thing is that there's a little bit of a subjectivity to this, and Rabbanim HaMachshirim each have their own ideas of certain exterior qualities or exterior things that you could see on the outside that say that to judge whether the person is is he a Yiras Shomayim. Like for example, is he a chassid of a specific rebbe, or is he a chassid at all? Okay, did he learn in kollel? Does his wife drive? Does he vote in Israeli elections? Does he use the internet? Does he use an unfiltered internet? Okay, those things that I just said are all things that there are actual Rabbanim HaMachshirim that for them that's the criteria to whether a person should be a shochet or not be a shochet. Those are criteria whether the person has the right Yiras Shomayim to be the job. Now, some people will think those are pashut, of course. Each one of those things, the thing that we care about, that's the ikar, that's really important. And other people think it's silly or petty to care about that thing. So it's unfortunate that what happens is that sometimes a person can get so focused on something exterior like this or something like that, and a really wonderful shochet or bodek is therefore not going to be taken for a job, even though he's really very qualified, because of some exterior issue that says, if he does that, then he can't be qualified. He can't work as a shochet or a bodek. So one last thing is, it's a very common requirement, is to say to it that a shochet needs to go to the mikveh each morning, or at least on the mornings when he shechts. And some people present that as a Yiras Shomayim point, as a sign of a person who's careful about kedusha and wants to tefillas Ezra, even though minat din you're not mechuyev to. But the truth is also that the Sefer Tyrus HaKodesh and the Kuzari, who's similar, who says that that the truth is that a person who's toivel for carry, a person who's toivel, that person has a better sense with his fingers when he wants the feel to check if the chalaf is smooth, and therefore a person needs to be toivel if he wants to be a shochet, he wants to be bodek his chalaf before he should shecht. That's the thing that he needs to do in order to do his job properly. So in a sense, this is going back to what the sort of real original need for Yiras Shomayim is. We want to make sure he does his job properly. We want to make sure, specifically mentioned many times in poskim, is that he checks his chalaf properly, so that being toivel is not just a sign of kedusha and a sign of Yiras Shomayim, but actually turns out to be something that has to do with being truly qualified to be a shochet, to do a better job of what he's doing.